Oh, it's a gentle journey, worthy of the wait, like a wild goose flying with its only mate, an all-enduring spirit on the whiskey trail.
Pints at the rugby at 15,000 downloads.
15,000 downloads, and we did say if we got to 15,000 downloads, we'd do another series. We're going to do another series. Here we are. It's series 5.
It's all the 5s, isn't it? Series 5, 15,000. So welcome to Whisky Unscripted with myself, Gordon Dallas, and Mr. Gordon Dundas.
Hello. It's a bit late for this, but I'll say it anyway. Happy New Year.
Yes, part of we don't do much notes in Whisky Unscripted, but it was just about, a quick January recap. How was January for you, Gordon? What have you been?
It went very quickly, finished off by a cheeky little skiing holiday, so it was fine. It was really good. Nice to see things opening up, a little bit more positivity out there, which is great. And it's been an interesting start to the year, I think, and long may it continue. But really, really good. How about you?
Absolutely. I suppose for whisky purposes, the highlight of January was Burns. And I think it's just, I'm really amazed this year. We get so many requests to do Burn suppers. Mm-hmm. I just feel it's a real growing phenomenon. It's always been a big, but I think it's getting even bigger now, a Burn supper amongst all sort of walks of life and all age groups as well. So I was away down to Epsom to the Royal Automobile Club to do a wonderful Burn supper down there, and did the immortal memory. I dressed the haggis. We had the piper. I'm doing one online in a couple of days' time down in London in a few weeks' time. So, and we had other ones. Lake of Menteith was a highlight as well. So Burns and whiskey, Gordon, fantastic combination.
No, it's very good. I mean, haggis and whiskey is a great combination, great poetry, an absolute legend and a legend, a complete part of Scottish history. It's a great evening. I did a tasting at the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, their venue in Glasgow, which was fabulous. And it was just great to get out and do things. So really, really good. And and now we're sort of halfway through February already. Now, I'm surprised, Gordon, you're obviously in a sauna currently. Yesterday was Valentine's Day. Or this week, sorry, I should say it was Valentine's Day. I've literally just got through all the cards now. The postman literally had a tent outside the house.
I can imagine.
I mean, it was unbelievable. They actually had an articulated lorry to deliver them all. But it's been good.
I'm glad you got the delivery there, Gordon. I was worried. So
what are you drinking? What are you drinking?
That's exactly what I was about to come on to. I am, as you know, Gordon, like a rugby, and I'm drinking a Penderyn Welsh single malt whiskey. Lovely tasting that we did before Christmas with the Masters of Malts, the sip and pour. And, it was a lot of ambassadors talking about the whiskey, and Penderyn was one of them. So I kept a little bit of it, and it's a lovely whiskey.
And has it got a nose of sour grapes?
Oh, lots of sour grapes in this one. Nothing to do with the whiskey, more to do with the rugby. How did you lose?
I know. Well done, Wales. Well done, Wales. Now, I'll tell you a few things about Penderyn.
That's a lovely jam.
It's a Welsh whiskey. It has a very, very high spirit strength. From what I can remember, somewhere in the region of 90% is its new make spirit strength. Yes. And it also uses an element of a coffee still for its distillation, I think, as well. And the late great, I think, Jim Swan was involved in Penderyn as well. So it's a very nice whiskey, actually, I have to say.
Started up in the year 2000, Gordon. So it's not, it's not the new boy or the new kid in the block anymore. That's now 22 years.
I could tell you a funny story about Penderyn.
Oh, go. On you go.
I think it was 2008. The Ryder Cup was at Valhalla in Kentucky. And it was right at the same time as the Bourbon Festival. And I was over there for the Bourbon Festival, and I met some guys from Penderyn there. Their names escape me at the moment, but they were very kind, and they said, well, come along to the Ryder Cup. We've got a sort of hospitality tent.
That is
Classic. So I went to Ryder
hallowed
Cup. It
words.
was very nice, and wandered around, and we got beaten. But the point of the story, thank you to them. The point of the story was on the way home. I was sitting in Louisville Airport at about 4:00 in the afternoon on the Sunday to get my flight to New York to fly back. And it was culminating in the Ryder Cup. So I'd spoken to the lady at the gate and said, look, I'm just round here. I'll come back at 5:30, half an hour before the plane's meant to leave. I came back at 5:15 and they'd been shouting my name and I'd missed my plane.
You missed it.
I missed it. That was a quick story about
Valhalla. I can't remember.
No, we got absolutely thumped, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Just like you did to the whiskey. By the way, that is a Portwood finish. Finished in export barrels. Wonderful. Lovely.
Very nice.
Unchill filtered. And it's 46%. And on that tasting, which was before Christmas, and I do apologise because I forget the chap's name that was doing it, talked about the new distillery they're opening in Llandudno.
Yeah, that's
North
right.
Wales.
Yeah, they're opening another one, yeah. Brilliant.
So
Good
that
to
is,
hear.
I'm having a lovely sip of Penderyn Welsh single malt. We'll talk about other single malts in the UK.
Yes.
I'm sure
Yep.
in this series we've got lots of stuff to get through, but what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Tamdhu Distinction, which is our whiskey we brought out just before Christmas.
Oh, yes.
Beautiful, 48%, non-chill filtered, no age. All about American oak sherry cask maturation. Beautiful whiskey, those lighter vanilla flavors, that sort of fruitiness of Tamdhu coming through. Gorgeous at 48%, and with a hint of water, beautifully sweet, buttery, creamy. A fabulous dram. If you've not tried it or got a bottle, make sure you go to your local specialist retailer and try and acquire one. Fabulous.
Really nice. Very nice. The Tamdhu Distinction. Gordon, Series 5, we've got a great guest coming up.
We do.
And we've got lots of new and some returning features. And
We do.
do you want me to tickle you with a couple this
Yes,
this
please.
moment,
Yes,
Tim?
please. Yep, please.
Well, Gordon, we did in series 1 and stroke 2, we did the A to Zs of whiskey. We looked at the production process, looked at some of the great labels and did an A to Z. I thought we could just have a little gamble through, a little frolic through an A to Z, but I would love to do it on people. Whiskey is about obviously the process, but really, if you talk to anyone, it's about the people.
Yep.
And I just thought you must have come into contact with loads of people, producers, ambassadors, connoisseurs, and I might look at some of the historical figures, and we'll just could we do an A to Z of the people?
Of course we can do an A to Z of the people. Of course we can. And I think we should look at doing that. And we should get some people to drop in any recommendations of people we should speak about in our A to Zs. I'm anticipating Z might be difficult, but
it could be difficult. Just on that A, we've already heard from Mr. Dave Arcari, who supplies the little music we play at the beginning of the show. So thank you, Dave. And he's big man into his smokehead sessions and his music sessions. But there's A for Arcari.
Absolutely. Plenty of other A's out there. I can't think of them at the moment, but I think let's start this next week. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah.
And I'll do a bit of research on A's and B's and C's and things like that. So that's absolutely fabulous. Now, Gordon, I'm going to say a few words to you, and I want your opinion of them. I've been scanning the news.
Yes.
And there's really only one thing out there, which is Macallan Reach, the Reach by the Macallan. £92,000 of your finest dough for an 81-year-old, I think it's 81-year-old single malt from Macallan called The Reach. Now,
The Reach.
Single cask from a sherry seasoned cask, bottled at 41.6, so it was teetering down there at that point. Amazing that you still can bottle a whiskey above 40% at that age, and I'm sure it's not overaged, of course, but only 288 bottles worldwide, and it's an interesting. I think it's one of the very oldest proprietary bottling of whiskies that there ever has been.
So it must be. And Gordon, just on that point, for people that maybe not so au fait with the world of whiskey, what happens if it was below 40%?
Well, you could age it. You can age it. It's not a whiskey. It's so. If it was 39.9% alcohol, that's not a whiskey anymore. So you would have to, the only way you could use that and make it a whiskey would be to marry that with a whiskey of a higher strength. So, but the funny thing is, if you married that 81-year-old at 39.9% with a 3-year-old at 70%, it would be a 3-year-old whiskey. So I mean, that's the madness, and you would obviously never do that, but that just shows you the example. So, you know, if it did drop below 40%, and there is whiskies in warehouses that is that, then you would have to marry it maybe with another cask of the same age or a similar age that's got enough aggregate strength to get you back above 40.
That's amazing. So they would be measuring the alcoholic strength as it matured.
Yep. So I mean, yeah, absolutely. So you know, Macallan are masters of what they do, but they'll be measuring the quality of the whiskey, the alcohol strength, the amount of liquid left in the cask, etc. So yeah, no, amazing release. Not, you know, out with most people's reach, but that was an amazing pack as well, with the hands and all this type of thing. Not particularly my style, but really, really nice release from Macallan, and you know, they swim in a different atmosphere, really. To have the very oldest Macallan, there's many people out there in the world who would want that. So
of course,
sure they know what they're doing. But scarcity, rarity, limited, these are all the things people want, you know, at the high end. It's the same with cars, watches, whatever. And whiskey is very much in that luxury area now.
Absolutely. God, the only other story that caught my eye was the Scottish Whisky Association's announcement a couple of days ago about the export value. We're not quite to pre-pandemic levels. We're about 8% from pre-pandemic levels, but it has risen from last year to now. It's £4.5 billion with more 70 centilitre bottles being exported out there. So the industry looks like it's on its way back.
Yeah, look, let's be honest. Let's be frank. The industry's had not a bad lockdown, if we're honest. I think what's really shifted is where whiskey's being sold, you know, where travel retail was big and where on-trade was big in certain countries, it's shifted to off-trade. And so I'm talking about retailers, online, direct to consumer. And so there's a big shift in how whiskey is sold, but the overall volumes are positive, which is great. So, and there is the whiskey market is tight at the moment. There is not a lot of free whiskey swilling around in the market in Scotland. So it's challenging, but you know, it's great. It's a good position to be in.
That's a very interesting point there, Gordon, and I'd like to develop it, but we have got a special guest, Mr. Malcolm Rennie, and he's the distillery manager of Rosebank. I thought before we get him on, let's have a wee chat about the great distilleries that have closed. Some will maybe never reopen, and some have reopened in the last year or two. So, Gordon, what are the headlines when I say closed distilleries, legends of the past?
Well, I mean, there are some. Let's start, you know, in a sort of lower part of Scotland. So, like Rosebank, obviously, reopening, and Malcolm will give us an update on that. And what a history this man has. I'm really excited to hear what he's going to tell us about his experiences in this industry and what he's going to bring to Rosebank. But I think the other legendary lowland that many people talk about is St Magdalene, which was in Linlithgow, and you know, long gone now. I think it's a block of flats, but you know, Rosebank and St Magdalene were very talked about in a very similar sort of way in terms of you know, the real you know, amazing style of these whiskies.
Yeah, and not far from where I'm sitting now, Little Mill, yeah, not far from where Auchentoshan sits now. Little Mill, just down the road.
Well, I mean, the connection with Little Mill and Rosebank is quite interesting, because Little Mill was at the entrance to the Forth and Clyde Canal, which is in Bowling, which is, if anybody's been to Scotland on the West Coast, it's pretty close to the Erskine Bridge. Little Mill was right there, so it had access to, you know, obviously there's a reason for it being there. But if you continue up that canal for about 20 miles, 25 miles, you'll get to Rosebank. You know, that's what, so you can cycle from Bowling to Rosebank. It would probably take you a couple of hours, but maybe 3. You know, that's the Forth and Clyde Canal, which is why Rosebank was where it was. So, you know, that's why we're rebuilding it on exactly the same site. And we'll get an update from Malcolm on where we are with that.
Going to be great. And when you're talking about these closed distilleries, it really is just, I've been reading about it the last couple of days. The other two that are mentioned in the same breath as Rosebank, really it's the royalty of closed distilleries with Brora and Port Ellen.
Yeah.
Being brought back by Diageo.
Absolutely, and it's great to hear. You know, in Islay we've got there's 9 distilleries currently. There'll be another one from Elixir Distilleries, which is being built, I think, currently or just starting. And Port Ellen, of course, will be rebuilt as well. So there's going to be 11 probably in about 2 years' time on Islay, which is fabulous. And Brora, up north, obviously its relationship with Clyne-Leash, and it's great to see it coming back as well. And that was obviously that famous announcement back in October 2017 when we all announced that that these distilleries were coming back. It was a great day. I remember that day well. So fabulous.
Yes. I suppose since Gordon Dallas is my name, Dallas do, which I must stop next time I'm up at Tamdhu. Must stop at the signpost and get a photograph. But
absolutely,
I always do. But it's now a museum, I believe. I think Scottish Heritage have got Dallas do, great Speyside distillery of the past.
Yeah.
It may not open, and many don't open, and that's
there's some real legends also. I mean, another one that I drank a little bit of a few years ago is a distillery called Imperial, which is in Carron, very near Tamdhu, not too far away, and it's not there anymore. Obviously, it's been knocked down. It's now Dalmonach, which is a big, new, beautiful distillery by Pernod Ricard, producing about 6 million odd litres, I think, if not a wee bit more than that. So I mean, great. There's a whole host of lost distilleries.
And Gordon, you can buy whiskey as a category, the lost distilleries.
There was this.
You can do Highland, Lowland, Campbellton, Islay, Speyside, but there's also in certain shops or online, because I've been, looking, you can get whiskey from these closed lost distilleries.
You can still buy whiskey from lost distilleries, and they're not always that expensive. But also there was a great business, that actually was trying to recreate whiskies of lost distilleries as well by taking the understanding of their production techniques and blending modern whiskey to make it taste similar, which I thought was an interesting approach. But it's all about it's a really exciting time in whiskey, and you think of all the distilleries that are opening that are new, and the ones that are coming back that are old, effectively new distilleries, but with that brilliant history, and Rosebank is one of them.
Oh, I'm really excited. I think without much further ado, should we speak to the man himself?
We should do, yeah, absolutely. Malcolm, how are you?
I'm very well, Gordon. Thanks very much. Nice to meet you guys.
Yes.
How are you, Malcolm? Great to see you.
Yeah, very good, thanks.
Now, I've not met Malcolm Gordon yet, so I believe you've been out to Rosebank already. You've met Malcolm?
I've met Malcolm, yes, I have.
Malcolm, how are we? I'm Gordon Dallas.
I'm very well. Nice to meet you, Gordon.
It's great.
This is really easy for me, by the way. You two guys could be the same name. I've only got one name to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like little and large, though, unfortunately. But,
so it's nice to meet you anyway, Malcolm. Good day. Thanks for coming on the show.
And we're obviously delighted about you heading up Rosebank. That's really, really exciting. I know you have a huge sort of history in this industry, and I'm keen to sort of start back at the beginning, Malcolm, from your perspective. As many people ask me, how did I get into the whiskey industry? And I sort of always say, well, I fell into it. How did you get into the whiskey industry, and how did you become a distiller?
I suppose I was kind of dragged into it by my father, really, I suppose, at the end of the day. My father was a cooper, and we originally went from Stirling to Islay in 1974.
Oh, wow.
Bunnahabhain Distillery.
Oh, nice.
Where my dad was the cooper there. So, yes, I spent my younger formative years at school in Islay, growing up there. As you well know, Gordon, both of these are a fantastic place to grow up.
Fabulous, yeah.
Obviously full of whiskey and everything that goes along with it. But then, initially, I didn't want to go into the whiskey industry. I actually went to join the Merchant Navy. Right. So I joined the Merchant Navy as a deck officer cadet, and I was away sailing the seven seas for about 2.5 years after I left school.
Sounds always a great thing to do. I've been around the world and traveling the seven seas.
Saw lots of things I don't want to see again, I must admit. As you can imagine.
I bet.
I'm just thinking of the Billy Connolly single In the Navy. I just don't know if that was instrumental in the decision. So yes, right,
and then I thought this isn't really for me. We'll get back to Islay. Kind of did a few wee bits and pieces jobs here and there, and then eventually got a job in Bruichladdich Distillery in 1987.
So that's quite a. So 1987 is. I mean, single malt's in a very different, very different place to where it is now, and that's what's so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so Bruichladdich at the time was owned by Invergordon distillers at that time. And again, it wasn't really marketed as a single malt Bruichladdich. It was really a blend, a whiskey they used for blending, I would assume.
Like most.
Yeah, like most at that time, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And so what was your first job? What did you do there?
Mashing. So basically through the whole thing, basically you start at the bottom, climb to the top, as far as the way I see it.
So you decided
it's taken a long time.
Well, yeah, but I mean, think of all that beautiful experience you've got.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So Bruichladdich, mashing, what age were you at that point?
Early 20s, mid-20s.
So you became an expert in mashing, and then tried a bit of fermentation, bit of distillation, bit of everything?
We did everything at Bruichladdich, yeah. So we did mashing and stilling and everything, and warehousing a lot, yeah. So my dad had then moved from Bunnahabhain to be head warehousement at Bruichladdich at that time. So myself and my dad worked together for 8 years at Bruichladdich.
And when you were in Islay, where were you living on Islay?
We were living in, obviously we moved to Bunnahabhain initially, and then we moved to Bruichladdich when I was working at Bruichladdich. And then subsequently I moved to Port Charlotte.
So after that, what was next for you, Malcolm?
So after that, unfortunately, Bruichladdich was closed in 1995. After White Mackay took over, they closed Bruichladdich. So I had a couple of wee jobs in between, and then eventually I was very lucky to get a job at Ardbeg Distillery when Glenmorangie took over in 1997.
Ardbeg on the south of the island, obviously, next door to Lagavulin and to Laphroaig. Yeah, so the more known for their bigger PT style.
Yes, but again, Ardbeg at that time wasn't really a single malt brand either. Obviously, it's been Glenmorangie turned it into a huge single malt, you know.
And that's the point. We just saw a thing recently about the exports, Malcolm, and you'll get this. Obviously, you know, back in the 90s, blends were absolutely dominant in terms of, you know, volume and everything. And single malts were components of those blends, really, with the exception of a few bigger brands like Glenfiddich. And now look where we are. It's an amazing sort of transformation, isn't it? How long were you at Ardbeg for? I was at Ardbeg until 2005. Now, I know this next bit. During that time, though, I spent 6 months on a secondment as assistant manager at Glenmurray Distillery in Elgin. Glenmurray. Yes. Glenmurray, my good friend Ian Allen works for Glenmurray. I know them well. Yeah, good. Oh, so that, absolutely. Owned now by the French, I believe. Yes. So really the Glenmurray thing was really what started putting me onto the management side. Of wanting to progress from mashing and stilling into the management side of, you know, distilling itself. So, and then, as you mentioned, 2005, I then moved to Kilchoman Distillery to open that up from scratch, basically. So Kilchoman, for those who maybe aren't aware, and a lot of people might be, was effectively the 8th distillery on Islay that was opened, as you said, in 2005 by the Wills family. I know Anthony and the sons quite well. And the only distillery that's not on the coast, on an old farm, is it not? Yes, that's right. Yeah, it's on the farm. Yeah. What are the things that you sort of have to think about? I mean, it sounds a really silly thing to, you know, but I mean, were you involved in the procurement and the building of all those? Not so much of the procurement of the equipment. I was kind of brought in when half of the equipment was installed. But so really, I was brought in to make the whiskey, in effect. Your experience and knowledge of the spirit style that you wanted to create, I guess, with everybody there, I guess. How do you sort of settle on that spirit style? Do you look at the stills and go, well, this is probably going to do this? So do we? Well, you really decide on a style of spirit you want to produce, and then you kind of fabricate the stills to match. Sure, of course, the spirit profile that you want, and you know, your whole mashing regime and everything else, and your wood policy. So, that was helped along there by Jim Swan, I must admit. Yeah, we mentioned Jim Swan. Yeah, yes. We just spoke about him earlier, actually. In the I obviously learned an awful lot from Jim. Well, I met Jim a few times when he was out. lived in Taiwan, and I met him when he was doing work with Cavalan. That's right. And he also, we were just Gordon's drinking a Penderyn, which he was involved with as well. And he's been involved in so many different distilleries, but. And a sad loss to the industry. What would Jim do when he came in to Kilchoman with yourself, Malcolm? What role would he have? Really in kind of defining the style of spirit and how to produce it, really, at the end of the day. Collaborative approach between myself and Jim. So if I was to say to you, what is the new make spirit style of Kilchoman from when you remembered? What's its sort of house style, would you say?
Well, Kilchoman was always it's quite a high cut point for a peated. I mean, it's a very peated. It's 55 parts per million, same as our beg. So it retains a lot of that estery fruitiness in it, along with that big hit of peat as well, and it's very well balanced. I would say. I think that's the key for Kilchoman.
Yeah, and look, I mean, you only need to look at that brand now and how well it's done, and that's not just down to good marketing; it's down to getting the intrinsics right and getting at the front end, and that's absolutely down to yourself.
And it's all about maintaining that spirit quality and character,
and buying good casks and all those things we've spoken about for 4 series, Gordon. 4 series, bambled on about whiskey.
I'm fascinated to hear you guys chat, but just how long did that take, Malcolm? And I've obviously got my Rosebank head on as well, but how long did that take to get that style locked in and replicated and you're away?
Not as long as you would think, really. I mean, you go in with a definite idea in your head, but you just do not know what spirit you're going to get until it comes out that still. You can plan as much as you like, but fortunately to date, most things have gone well, and we've ended up with a spirit that we hoped we would achieve. So obviously, I'm hoping I'm going to do the same job at Rosebank.
Okay,
Kilchoman 2005. Obviously, how long were you there for after
5
that?
years.
5 years. 5 years.
Yeah.
And then would I be right in saying John Macallan came in?
That's right. Yes, John came in.
The late great John, who is a beautiful, was a lovely man, and a real, a fantastic guy. Unfortunately, again, not with us anymore.
No.
He would obviously worked for years at Bunnahabhain, hadn't he?
Bunnahabhain, that's right. Yeah.
So John came in after you. So after you left in 2010.
2010. Yeah.
Of course, I'm losing the place. Where did you head off to next?
I then headed off to the Borders, or to Annandale Distillery, and just outside Annan, which was kind of similar to Rosebank, I would say. It was a derelict distillery. It was closed for an awful long time, though. It was like almost 100 years it had been closed. And basically, yes, from scratch, started that one up again. Again, heavily involved right from the very beginning with designing the spirit profile and all the equipment to make that spirit.
And then after Annandale?
After Annandale, I did about a couple of years of consulting, actually. But I did a bit of consulting for New Start, specifically New Start distilleries. So the first one job I got was Lochlee, and I did a bit for Annabelle at Macnean as well.
Oh, yes. Up near Ardnamurchan on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula, opposite basically Tobermory, if you're up that way.
That's right. Consulted. I must admit, I quite enjoyed it. But the lure of making whiskey, I think, came back to draw me back to actually making whiskey again. And then from consulting, I then agreed to become the distillery manager at Lochlee Distillery.
Which coincidentally have just launched their first single malt. Yes. I hope you have a bottle.
Yes.
And are you? You must be proud of that as well.
Absolutely,
obviously,
yes. I'm proud of it. All the whiskies I've made.
Great. Absolutely. That's of course, I meant that. But that. It's great to see that, because I actually went to the distillery about 3 years ago, and I met Neil, who I sort of know through just friends, and he was talking to me about what he wanted to do. And
when was that day then? Was that the weekend?
It was basically 2 days before Christmas, I think. It might even be Christmas and New Year. Yeah. And I had a wonder.
Listeners, where is it? And could you just a quick background on Lochlee? Fact check.
Lochlee's it's just outside Mauchline, and it's actually a farm that Robert Burns lived on.
For those who don't know, it's near Kilmarnock. Near Kilmarnock on them. So sort of Ayrshire, south of Glasgow is the best way to a lowland whiskey.
Yes.
And it was released, I think, on a couple of weeks ago. So
Thursday was released, yeah.
Yeah, so great to see that out there finally, and obviously what then has happened, of course, is you have joined us, and our friend of the show, John Campbell from Lefroig, fame, 25 odd years plus, has joined Lochlee. So, and now Malcolm, you are the distillery manager of Rosebank. So how does that attract you? How does that, in taking on board your history, you're clearly very well suited to where we are with Rosebank, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a huge honour, I think, to be asked to reopen on such an iconic distillery like Rosebank. I think that was the main draw for me.
Yeah,
to be involved in that whole project, to bring back a distillery like Rosebank is just a once in a lifetime opportunity, I think.
When I was speaking 3 or 4 years ago about this, my excitement was like, this is such an exciting project. And even now, from your perspective, getting your hands and getting to that point, which we'll just discuss, when you can start to distill and see what the spirit's going to look like, is really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was down there this morning and, well, yes, there's a long way to go yet.
Yes. So for those who've not, who a lot of people will know the story, but we're rebuilding Rosebank on the original site by the Forth and Clyde Canal in Camelon. It's been affected slightly by COVID, but it is pressing on.
Yes.
And so if you could do a wee summary of where we are, that would be great.
A lot of the building structure is up. We have some of the plant is in, so the mash tun's in, the heating tank's in, the mill is in, and the grist case is in. And more excitingly, the stills are arriving in a couple of weeks' time.
Oh, I think we'll be there for that. Good.
Yes.
And where are they arriving from?
They're arriving from Forsyth, up in Rothes. Yeah.
Now, Forsyth, for those who don't know, Forsyth are pretty much the main production, main people who produce copper pot stills, obviously. And they have an order book that I think stretches way into the future, and you have to get your slot to get your stills made, don't you?
So we managed to get the original drawings for the original stills, and so they've been replicated by Forsyth. So obviously the whole idea is we'll try and replicate the spirit of Rosebank. We never get. No one knows if we'll ever get it exactly correct, obviously.
No, because we don't have any new make from back then, and the whole world has changed and things are different. But actually, there's a chance you could make it better, of course, because of the modern ways of doing things.
Yeah.
But it was famous for its juxtaposition, I think, and that's as a distiller, you must still sit there and think that is really weird.
It is weird. It's very weird. Even
explain the weirdness, please. Explain it to the listeners.
Well, so it's triple distilled, which normally gives you a very lighter, kind of smoother, fruitier kind of spirit. And then you put it through worm-tub condensers, which add body and depth back into it. So it's kind of as Gordon says, it's kind of a juxtaposition of two different styles really mixed together. And if you see the stills, when you actually see the stills, there's 3 stills. They're very different shapes, sizes. The wash stills are very weird shape. Things just don't, and the way they've set out, the way they run, just sometimes doesn't make sense. But obviously, that not making sense makes a great whiskey at the end of the day. So,
well, I think that's the point. I mean, you taste old Rosebank, some of the ones we've released, the 30-year-old. It's just sumptuously juicy, summer meadowy type whiskey, isn't it? It's beautiful, beautiful whiskey. Obviously, Lowland triple distilled. I assume it's going to be I'm not trying to be too technical, but it's going to be a straight triple distillation. It'll just be through one still, through a second intermediate still, and into the spirit still at the end.
Certainly to start with, anyway. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Till we get a kind of spirit that's close to what we think we like, and then we can start playing with different things, different ways of. We can take some of the high wines from the intermediate and put it back in and stuff like that. But,
this is where it all gets very
technical.
It's where you have drawings of arrows, and this is where this goes. And
but one of the main things we can affect the spirit style will be through the worm tubs. So by varying the flow rates in there and the ambient temperature of the cooling water, we can add body or take body out. We might end up having maybe 2 different styles. Who knows? We might have a seasonal style. In the winter, obviously, the water's very, very cold, so we can have a much heavier style of spirit if we want. If we want to do that, that's the beauty of the whole thing.
And could you I've got a couple of questions, just explain, because I'm conscious that 1 or 2 people maybe listen to the show that aren't as literate. Why does worm tubs add body to the spirit as opposed to the shell and tube condensers?
Well, so worm tubs basically is the vapor goes through a big long copper coil, which is immersed in cold water. Now, the vapor then goes through there. When it goes in, it condenses really quite quickly compared to a modern shell and tube condenser. And so then you get less copper contact in effect.
Right.
So that adds a lot of that body into it. Yeah.
And another question I've got, that's for both of you. And this is another thing for Gordon for Whisky Unscripted. I've been in touch with the Scottish Whisky Research Institute, and we'll be hearing from them in the course of the next few weeks, talking about flavour, where it comes from. Now, you've put down the blueprint for many a new distillery. I'll ask that for both of you. Flavour. I mean, you've already maybe intimated where it comes from, but where does it come from, and how does it, get into the new makes?
I would say it comes from the whole process, not just the stills. I mean, obviously you concentrate a lot on the stills, but the way you mash, the way whether you run clear worts or dirty worts, what yeast you use in fermentation time. There's so many different factors that kind of change the flavour of your final spirit.
Yeah, look, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, I've always said, and to people that the most important part is actually your grind. If you don't get your grind right, the whole thing's a snowball and becomes a nightmare. So, I mean, it is every element of it, and some distilleries want clear worts, some distilleries want cloudy worts because they're trying to achieve different things. Fermentation, all that, absolutely. And your distillation is almost a sort of cream on the top, but it's the base that needs to work. What I think is really, really important is that there is people that, talk about casks and how important casks are. And they are absolutely important, because you put great spirit in a bad cask, it's going to be a bad whiskey. We know that. But it's not as simple as saying 70% of the flavor comes from the cask and 30%. Rosebank's probably more of a spirit-driven whiskey in terms of its house style, more than flavors from the cask in terms of the history and the style of whiskey, because it suits that. And I think so it's not as simple as sort of pigeonholing it as that, but it's everything that comes together to make a great whiskey.
Because you say, Gordon, we know historically that Rosebank was put into probably not the best casks in the world, to be honest.
Yeah.
A lot of it anyway, So it's the spirit character the spirit itself that shines through, rather than being influenced more so by the wood.
And the reason why that is because we're predominantly, I would imagine the first cask we fill will be a refill hogshead, I would imagine.
Yes, I would hope so,
and that'll be a cask that's been used before, so it's going to generate a bit less colour, a little bit. It's not going to impact that spirit as much as a first fill. And you'll get those beautiful fruity flavors and that beautiful element of those worm tubs and the weight coming through, hopefully. So that is, I would imagine, how we're going to do it. But probably be a first fill sherry butt that we fill.
Another
I'm
question,
joking.
Mark, just a technical question would be just the layout. Are you have any say in the layout where the stills will be in relation to the mash tuns, in relation to when you walk through the distillery?
That's kind of all been decided already, Gordon. Yeah, really.
Right. That was 3 years ago.
It's laid out very logically anyway. It's fine. It's absolutely fine.
And I think the one thing, if people know, it's a very odd site, isn't it?
Oh yes.
I mean, it's on a corner, and it's not got a lot of room, but it's been very cleverly designed, hasn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So the whole production process just basically goes from one end of the building to the other, which is absolutely perfect. That's the way it should be. And it's very visitor friendly as well, the whole distillery. Yeah.
No, it's great. We're really excited by it. So what are the rough moving forward now to, and I think things will change obviously, but what's the rough sort of timetable till you can get your first mash done?
I'm going to say end of August, beginning of September, hopefully.
End of August, beginning.
If everything goes well.
And then you'll have a little period of trying different things.
We'll have a good few weeks of trying different things, yeah, absolutely.
And then settle on a spirit.
Or maybe two different styles of spirit, who knows?
Interesting.
These distilleries that are opening up, great for the local economy and for jobs. Will we be supplying jobs? Production
absolutely,
as well as for visitors? Have you done it already? Are you looking for people?
No, I'll be looking to recruit some people probably in the next couple of months, next 2 to 3 months, I would imagine. There'll be some job adverts going out.
Yeah. Yeah, and Rosebank is all about the local community. It's all about. it was always, the people of Falkirk are very proud of this distillery. So we want to, have local people working there would be fabulous. So
we certainly are. Everyone's been fully behind us and bringing Rosebank back. Yeah, it's been fantastic.
It's really exciting. Yeah.
And got another question I'm going to throw out to both of you, because you've got to ask these questions. It did close, Rosebank. So did Brora. So did Port Ellen. We've had a discussion about these distilleries. Some never opened again. So why, when we open Rosebank, are we confident 1993 won't happen again?
Well, I think the single malt market's totally changed. I mean, it's the market for single malt's enormous.
Yeah, that's the big point, isn't it? Really, you've mentioned already, Gordon. It was all about blends, and single malt as a category hadn't really taken off. So, if it wasn't required for the blend, there was not really a need for these distilleries. There is a need now. That's my point.
I think the point was, if you look at the market in the 90s, single malt was still relatively small, but it was a category that got a lot of people interested. And I think what happening, there was almost a state of flux in terms of blends were stale and not really doing much, and there was an oversupply of single malt, and so certain distilleries fell by the wayside. And those that were doing single malt were doing it, like Macallan and Glenfiddich and other people were doing it and getting out there and doing things. And then this rise of single malt, I think, happened in the 90s, the late 90s. And now look where we are. And I don't see it stopping, really. And I mean that in a really positive way. I mean, you think of places like India, which don't really import that much single malt at the moment. We're literally on the tip of the iceberg with China. And Australia's garnering a lot more, they're drinking less and drinking better, I keep getting told down there, which is not very un-Australian to me, but they're loving it. And America is the sort of, America is continuing to grow. So the long-term sort of DNA of the industry is very positive, and I think that's why you're seeing so many distilleries opening up. Is that fair, Malcolm?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah.
So we're looking at hopefully end of August, early September. I don't think we'll be looking into visitors until 2023. But
no, that's a good thing from my point of view.
Yeah. You need a clean run
at it. You leave me alone to get the spirit right.
Yeah,
first.
Exactly. Yeah. But that's the rough time scale. And for those people out there, we've launched a 30-year-old. There's another one coming, another launch of these very rare casks that we have as part of the purchase of the distillery that we got. There'll be one of them coming out in midsummer, roughly. It's going to be a 31, I think. Ooh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but it is. It's really exciting. It's really exciting. Have you been, Gordon? Have you been to site, Gordon?
I've not been to site. You've done videos and go to the Rosebank website and the social media channels. You're there with Robbie Hughes. I've not been asked yet. Maybe Malcolm. I forgot.
I'm asking you, Gordon. You come whenever you like.
Thank you, Malcolm.
Let me know.
No one else has so far.
There'll be a hard hat with your name on it.
Yes.
Now, I've looked into some of the. I love it's great history around there. I love my history in the Forth and Clyde Canal, the Union Canal as well. And even this morning, I was reading about Alfred Nobel, he of the dynamite. And the Nobel Peace Prize living just round the corner from Rosebank. So,
right, okay.
the big dynamite factory just down the road from Rosebank, which hopefully might even feature in one or two of the chats when we do tours there. Staffed mostly by women, even during World War II, it was firing out munitions. So, fascinating part of the world, and that's going to be wonderful. My last question to you, Malcolm. Do you know the rough output of what a distillery will be, but the number of mash tuns you've got? And
yes. So we've been looking to produce around about 1 million litres a year. So we want to hit the ground running, really. So, philosophy is, if you don't make it when you start, then you can't sell it where you need to sell it. So, we might as well start at full production, really.
Yeah. That's great news. Great news.
Absolutely. I mean, I think 1 million litres puts it, it's a very similar size distillery in terms of output to Glengoyne.
Yes.
Which is 1 million as well, pretty much. Tamdhu, considerably bigger, but 1 million is, and actually, if you think about it, people go, 1 million. We were at Macallan last week. I was actually at Macallan last week, and they could produce, I think, somewhere in the region of 15 or 16 million. And then I was at Glenlivet. We were doing a wee tour around a couple of distilleries, and Glenlivet's currently, I think, at 21 million. But if they expand their next expansion 3, as they call it, that could be up to 30 million litres.
Right.
So quite a bit bigger.
So
but
it's not big when you see it in that perspective, but fair size, reasonable size. Yeah.
Exactly. 1 million litres is a lot of bottles of whiskey in 10
lot of whiskey
years' time.
for you to sell in the future.
Yeah,
Gordon,
exactly. Which is a good thing to have. So
yeah.
Fantastic. So, well, Malcolm, I'm hugely excited you're on board with this. It's great to have you and your experience.
I can't wait to get my hands on those stills and start making that spirit.
Like a kid in a sweet shop.
Absolutely, yes.
It's almost like heart surgery. I just have a vision of when the stills go inside that building, you just feel it start beating. It almost comes to life, isn't it? Like a heart going into a body.
Yeah, they always say the stills are the beating heart of every distillery, and they certainly are.
That will be amazing.
Great to see them going in.
Now, there's only... Sorry, carry on, Gordon.
No, I'm just saying, and they'll have to physically drive down the road. That's how you get stills.
Yes,
I'm not being stupid, but it's...
they'll be driven on the back of a lorry down the road from Rothes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you can see it in 2 weeks' time. There'll be people fuming because there's a lorry going really slowly down the A9.
Half the road's going to be closed as well. So
down the A9, which is at times the worst road in the world anyway.
Yeah.
There's going to be a wide load with stills on it and outriders and all this type of thing, and that'll be the stills coming. It's very exciting. One really interesting story, Malcolm. I think you may know this story. There's only one old bit of kit, isn't there? Am I right?
The mill. Yes.
The mill. So there's an interesting story about the mill, isn't there?
So the mill originally came from Portwood Distillery and came over to Rosebank in the 1930s. Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And these mills, when you go around all of these distilleries, they're either Bobby Mills or Porteous Mills.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. Is it a Bobby Mill?
It's a Bobby we've got.
It's a Bobby Mill.
Yes.
Same as Glengoyne. And basically, the story of these are brilliant because, well, they're not really ultimately in the long range sort of, but these mills were made so well that they were the victim of their own success and nobody needed a new one.
They were basically over-engineered so much that basically they didn't wear out. You replace a few parts now and again and they just keep going. So, so ultimately the companies went out of business,
Yeah, and there's this very famous guy who goes around all the distilleries fixing these mills. I think he's a Welsh guy, is that right?
Ronnie Lee, yeah. Mm-hmm.
He goes around all of them. Great business because, and it's a great story. So Port Ellen Mill at Rosebank, and that's fabulous. So, look, Malcolm, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. We're very excited.
It's been great. It's been able to speak to you guys.
No problem. I will. Gordon, you get up to Rosebank.
You need to come, Gordon.
Exactly.
Yes, I'm coming. I'm coming with my stick of dynamite.
Just let me know first.
Yeah.
Great, Malcolm. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining us.
Pleasure to meet you too, Gordon.
Launching Series 5 of Whisky Unscripted. We're off and running, Gordon.
Hey, thank you, Malcolm.
Pleasure. Cheers. Thanks.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
And he's off. That was. Yeah, we had plans because it's unscripted to try and keep it down time-wise.
Yeah,
and we've got someone like Malcolm on, and to hear you guys chat and talk, I just wanted to let it roll. So
I failed. Fantastic. And look, a man with amazing experience to do what's going to be coming down the pipe for Rosebank in the next 6 to 9 months. It's really, really exciting. So great to have him on board. Lovely guy, and he's clearly champing at the bit, which is great.
Yeah. What a toy that is for somebody of his experience to just get everything connected together and get it running. What a job that will do.
Absolutely.
You go to these distilleries, Gordon, very quickly. You go to these distilleries, you just think it's just there, it's just here. You won't, somebody had to physically put them together. Make it all work.
It's unbelievable to have. Obviously, Robbie Hughes I think Robbie's worked at about 97,000 distilleries. He's got a huge amount of experience. Malcolm as well. Robbie heavily involved in bringing Tamdhu back from mothballed as well. So a lot of distilling experience in the business and very, very excited about what's coming down the pipe for Rosebank. It's great.
It's absolutely fantastic. My final point in this show, I'm going to have to phone Sandy McIntyre of Tamdhu up, because if he gets stuck behind those stills in the A9, he will blow his top. So I better tell him, avoid the A9. You know what Sandy's like behind that slow driver.
Yeah. No, utterly fabulous. And that is episode 1 done, Gordon.
Yes, we've done Whisky Unscripted. We've got a great game next week. We've got Whistle, we've got the A to Zs of the people in the world of whiskey that have made it their life and have made the whiskey what it is in Scotland. And you've already mentioned an A. You didn't even know you did it, Gordon. Talking about Glenmoray. So we'll get to those.
Ian Allen. Yes.
So we'll get to these A's. And we've got other stuff that, more
guests and more brilliant things. So look, spread it far and wide, everybody. We've fit 15,000 downloads and I think more listens actually, which is great. But look, we love doing it. We hope you enjoy listening to it, and it's start of another great series.
Okay, another bit of Welsh whiskey.
Absolutely. I finished my distinction. I should have had a Rosebank, really. Cheers.
Bye
bye.
Staying ahead on the whiskey trail. Oh, staying ahead on the whiskey trail.